You're listening to Travel Tales with Virgil.
Welcome to the first episode proper, and I couldn't think of a better person to start with. I hope this podcast series will fuel your armchair travelling imagination, so despite the current travel restrictions, we should never stop dreaming of future adventures. Our first guest, Damian Browne, is a former professional rugby player hailing from Galway. Damian's passion for travel and adventure has led him to visit more than 50 countries on 6 continents. Damien is an adventurer in the truest sense of the word. I've been closely following his every adventure on social media for years. Damien has been using the world's most extreme environments to test his physical and mental capabilities. He has trekked through the Sahara Desert and spent 63 days rowing solo across the Atlantic. He's climbed 5 of the 7 summits and gone on adventures to some of the most beautiful but less travelled countries in the world. Exuding a calm charisma and undeniable passion for his adventures, I really enjoyed my chat with Damien, and I think you will too. So let's go straight to Damien now to hear his truly great travel adventures. Hello, Damien. You're very welcome to the podcast. It's great to see you. I've been living vicariously through you since 2017, where I was following your solo Atlantic row, and I've been following you ever since. So I feel like I know you very well. Even though you don't know me, I know you very well. Before we talk about your adventures, and you are a true adventurer, you were a rugby player, professional rugby player for how long?
I played pro rugby for 15 years, basically, from leaving school here in Galway, straight into the Connacht setup at the time. And then I retired, 15 seasons later in eastern France in a small little town called Oyonnax.
And I noticed your email is .fr. Is that because that was in France?
I spent, in total, I spent 5 years playing out in the top 14. I played for 2 clubs out there. So, so that's why I've kept the .fr email since then.
And was that your first time living away from Ireland then when you were in France?
I had previously, before France, I had lived in the UK for 4 years in Northampton in the Midlands, East Midlands in England, playing there. So I moved from Galway to the East Midlands when I was about 24.
First time that I got to know you, I knew about you, like you played with Leinster and Connacht, but I started following you through Facebook when you were doing your posts for the Atlantic row. So that was 5,000 kilometers, wasn't it, back in 2017?
That's right, 5,000 kilometers. It ended up just being over that. Took 63 days, and it was the profound adventure I'd ever been on. It was incredibly challenging on many levels, and still something that has left I suppose indelible mark on me since then.
Joe, I remember when you started on it, I have to say, I didn't think you were going to make it, because was it the first day or the second day, and you looked broken, and that was the start.
Well, I kind of was, to a certain extent. I was the way I describe it is I was just shook to my core, because everything that could go wrong had gone wrong in that first kind of 24 hours, 36 hours. And it was just totally unexpected. I had prepared myself what I would deem, for my own standards, a very high level physically and mentally. And I felt I was ready for anything, but I wasn't ready for it to happen on day 1. I thought day 1 and 2 would just be a nice kind of easy jaunt away from land, and then the real heavy stuff, the real challenging stuff, the way I saw it and foresaw it, was that it would happen in the middle of the Atlantic. In fact, it actually happened on day 1. After about 7 hours into day 1, everything physically went wrong. Like my hands blistered, my hands, all the calluses tore off, and my heels blistered, and then I got seasickness, and then I got some sort of weird cramping in all my lower limbs, all the major muscle groups in my lower limbs. And just as that kind of world was, which if you can imagine coming from the rugby background, your rock, like the thing you can always rely on, the thing you prepare is your body. And for that to be breaking down was a big enough shock. And then Mother Nature decided to throw another couple of hurdles at me by changing the tides and changing the wind direction. So I was going through this physically really difficult spot that I really couldn't make head nor tails of, and that was obviously taxing me mentally. And then I had this other challenge then to come at the same time, where the boat started to slow down basically to crawling pace. Like, I mean, it was basically staying on the spot. I was going 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 of a knot rowing, when you should be doing kind of like 2.5 knots, you know. So yeah, so I ended up persevering through it and finding a way through it, but it wasn't without real internal chaos, real dark moments, real destructive thoughts. I suppose I have prepared for those things through my training. So I would say my preparation got me through that. And I know there was another couple of boats in the same position as me who didn't, unfortunately, get away from those conditions, you know, because us as I was in a race called the Talisker Whiskey Atlantic Challenge, and there was 25 boats in the race, but like most of them are 4-man boats and 2-man boats, and there was only 5 of us people who were trying to do it as solos, you know, and we just don't have the power, and we also have to rest at some point, you know. We can't row 24 hours a day like the 4-man boats can and like the 2-man boats. So unfortunately, 2 of those guys, they just didn't get away from those conditions, and you know, looking back, I would say I got away from them just because I had prepared my mind for those really dark, difficult moments, and I was just able to kind of refocus and reset on what was within my control and just get to work on the process. And, you know, I would say a lot of that has come from my rugby background as well. And and thankfully, once I think it was midway through day 2, finally the winds shifted into the back of my boat and started to blow me away, and then I was out to sea and my race was on.
I remember another day that particularly stood out in my memory was the day capsized twice, didn't you, in the same day?
Yeah,
that must have been intense.
That was the craziest day of my life by a long way. I mean, it was a storm basically, and it was a following storm though, so it was pushing me in the right direction, you know. But you're talking like 8-9 meter waves, and anytime I'm not rowing, when I was asleep, basically the boat was at the mercy of the elements, right? So that would mean that the boat would go side on to the waves, and the waves would kind of come over the top of it, and that's what happened that morning. Basically, in that storm, I'm fast asleep in the cabin at around, I can't remember, 6 or 7 in the morning, and I'm woken up when I'm propelled by the force of the wave that's hit the boat into the side of the cabin head first, and I split my head open, and the boat goes on a capsize, so 2 degrees over. Now these boats are designed to self-right, so it will always come back up as long as the 2 cabins are shut and airtight, because those are air pockets, and then underneath you have all the ballast, all the weight, and once the weight goes on top, it will just, you know, that's the way it works physics wise, it'll self-right. So I was like smashed into the side of the cabin head first, and I'm trying to figure out what the hell is going on, you know. Like, it's like if you imagine somebody waking you up with a hammer to the face, like, that's the best way I can describe it. You just get this shock of pain, and you're in this unconscious state, and you just get this, like, it's bizarre in its impact, because you're coming out of a state of, well, I don't know how to describe it, only that it's an unconscious state, and then you're awoken with pain, you know. And then there was like, you're just trying to figure out what's happening, and then I kind of came to, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm on the boat, and I felt that kind of familiar from rugby, you know. You get a lot of cuts around your eyes and face, and it felt that kind of familiar sensation of the blood on the skin, and I could like almost taste it in my mouth. And then it kind of dawned on me then in a nanosecond, if you want, or in a split second, that like, oh yeah, you're capsizing here, you're on the boat, it's capsizing, and you're bleeding because your head got smashed against the cap. And then the way the day went, then it was like I had another capsize later on that afternoon, where I was out on deck, and I ended up going into the water with the boat as it was kind of going over, and then holding onto the boat with one hand while it went 180 degrees underwater, and just been in this like really calm state when, you know, I should have been in absolute terror and chaos, because if my hand had come off that handle that I just instinctively grabbed, well, it could have been it, you know. I could have been separated from the boat, and it could have been it, brown bread, game over, you know, because there's no way, if I get separated from that boat, that's it. Like, there's no way I'm catching it again, especially in a storm. So yeah, like I hit the water, and I just remember thinking, wow, this water is really warm. That was the first thought that came into my head. And then I kind of switched into a mental state that I had prepared, and I just started telling myself to squeeze. And I was in a incredibly surprising state of calmness underneath the water, where I was just able to concentrate on that one thought, and eventually the boat self-righted. And it didn't take long. It only takes about, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 seconds for it to go all the way around, but like, it feels like a bit of an eternity when you're hanging on, telling yourself to just squeeze your grip. And then it kind of lassoed me back onto deck, and I was still hanging on to the handle, kind of arse over tit, like clenched onto it like white knuckles, you know. And even to this day, I'm still kind of in awe of that moment, and that I was so calm when I went into the water, and I was able to just concentrate on that one thing that I had visualized and practiced. And I think once I got through that, and I kind of processed the with some, I suppose, when the weather relented and I got some time to kind of process it and feel a bit safer on the boat and feel like I wasn't in survival mode. I didn't feel like there was much else that could be thrown at me that I wouldn't get through.
Yeah, my other memory is there's some great photos of you when you arrived in the Canaries, wasn't it? Like, you on top of the boat, and you just looked elated. The look on your face, it must have felt unbelievable when you wrote. Your family were there, weren't they? And
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
feeling that must have been like winning the Heineken Cup, you know.
It was. Do you know what? It was a little bit strange, because so I knew that I was from about 30 miles out. I kind of knew that I've made it, you know. There's nothing going to stop me now. And it literally was that close to the land. When I first saw land and nighttime in Antigua, and I could see the light pollution from the island. And then I rode a little bit more that night, had in the morning, and about 20 miles out, the land was finally visible. And that's when I felt I've made it. So the next 20 miles seemed to take fucking forever. That land did not seem like it was getting any closer for a good 18 of those miles. And then about 2 miles out, it started to get a bit bigger, and I started to be kind of more recognize the features of land. And then it was a case of kind of making my way south, and then around the island, actually kind of come down and around the island and in. And I don't know if this kind of even sounds strange to me saying it, but I actually didn't feel very celebratory at the start. I kind of wanted to be left alone. It's so bizarre even to say it, but I did take a moment to have it to myself. Like, so once I crossed the official line, I didn't celebrate straight away. Actually, if I'm being honest, I had a little bit of a cry to myself. And then I got up, and then there was a few boats circling around, and one of them handed me a flare. And then once I let that emotion out, it just came out like a flood, and I was so like primal in it. Like, I was screaming and roaring, and just it's difficult to describe, you know, because of the, I suppose, uniqueness of the adventure, and you spend so much time alone, and then you arrive into this playground for the rich and famous with these super yachts around you. And you are disheveled. I lost like 28 kilos, big beard, yesterday's food probably still in it, you know. And then you have this official finish line. So I got up, celebrated. There's some pretty cool photos that I'm, you know, really kind of lovely mementos of the moment. And then you got to row for another 15 minutes to get into where your family and friends are. So you got to get back down, and there's a bit of a kind of, what would you say, lull. And then you get back in, and then when I saw my parents and saw my friends that were there, my brother and my sister, and kind of see the emotion on their faces and see how much it meant to them was, very special, and a really, really special moment.
And, you know, as I said before, like, you're a proper adventurer. You talked there about a land, like, place for rich and famous. And I know from your travels that isn't the sort of traveling that you're interested in. I read something that you had written about being, when you were young in Ireland, growing up, on deserted beaches and forest trails, and that being in Ireland gave you your love of Ireland and also a love of traveling. And I love that idea, because I would be the same, that Ireland actually gives me a love of seeing other countries and then appreciating Ireland even more.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for those, for the decision my parents made to kind of travel within Ireland and explore, I suppose, the beauty and the richness of, in particular, we were very focused on the West Coast. So we would have holidayed as far away. So I'm from Galway originally. We would have holidayed down to West Cork, West Kerry, and then up to Donegal, up to as far as the Inishowen Peninsula. And often we went back to like Bantry for a couple of years, or Dingle for a couple of years, or Inishowen and Buncrana and Ballyliffin for a couple of years, so I've such vivid memories of those kind of, maybe they were adventures for us at the time, they were adventures for us as a family, packing up nearly like the Griswolds, packing up the car and taking off. And, there's such, my dad had a camera at the time, a nice camera. And I actually kind of think my love of photography came from this moment as well, that there's reams of photographs at home of us on those holidays, be it in Donegal or on these, I did, like, some of the beaches on the West Coast are just phenomenal, so, there's not only memories in my mind and in my kind of long-term memory, but there's also pictures there to kind of back them up and to relive some of the memories. And I've, great ones of, like, there's a great one we got, my family think they knew I was going to be this type of person who would seek out kind of extremes and adventure when we were up at Malin Head. And I went missing for about half an hour, and I went climbing down. I wanted to get as close to the head of Ireland. So I went climbing down the kind of cliff face, and I came back up when I got as far as I felt comfortable I think I was about 12 or 13. And my dad, who is a very relaxed man, was absolutely raging. And he was so angry that it left a mark on everyone. Like, my brother was probably only, if I was 13, my brother was probably only about 5. And he still remembers that. He never seen my dad as mad, because, like, I was gone climbing down the bloody, like a young fella, like fearless, climbing down the cliff face. But yeah, listen, like, there's loads of memories like that one, of getting lost in forests in Sligo and getting caught in downpours, and then just on beaches like down in Kerry and Cork, and taking the boat out to like Glengariff from out to the islands there off Cork. So it's amazing. I still to this day have, if not a stronger love for the West Coast and for Ireland, because of that. And I always kind of like try and relate that. Like, I think, wow, like, look what we have here in Ireland. Like, it's just incredible that so many people, they don't know about it. They come to Ireland, they go to whatever, they go to Dublin, they go to the Guinness Storehouse, they go to the Cliffs of Moher, and that's great. And there are all the highlights, but there's these amazing places. And I think, well, if we have these here in Ireland, every other country must have the same thing. And that's where I want to go. I want to find the Glaslon Beach in Slovakia, or the equivalent of it in wherever, Ethiopia. I want to see these like hidden gems in these countries, because I'm sure every country has them, because we have them, and I get a great kind of reward and satisfaction for finding those places around the world.
Yeah, and you know what? I always kind of, if a tourist asks me for information, that's exactly the information that I would give them. I'm from Clare myself, and and then I do the same thing when I'm traveling, that I will always ask people, where do you recommend? Where's the places to go? Because that's where you really find. I mean, I actually saw one place you did couchsurfing in Iran.
Yeah,
and that kind of sums it up perfectly. Because you really are mixing with the locals then, aren't you? It's I like that idea. You really get to know.
It's fantastic, because you get to have this window, but you get to see how they live their life on a daily basis, be it for a couple of days, or I did 3 weeks going around Iran, and of course I would have visited a few different places, but that's 3 weeks of living with different people in that culture and just seeing what their daily existence is like, and that's where you get, I think, a real window into what it's like to live in these places and what it might be like. Now, I admit it's a really short window, and it mightn't be a realistic window, but it's as close as I'm ever going to get, to living in Iran. That's for sure. So I really like to do it. I think it's not only is it a perspective giver, but also it's a great experience. It's a real enriching experience to be down. I want to say at the roots of their society, and seeing what that's like.
Particularly countries like that where you don't get too much information about how they think or what they feel about their country. So meeting people, you really get to see their love of the country. I've talked to other people who have been to Iran, and they love meeting foreigners in their country. They're very proud of their country.
Very, yeah. They're absolutely beautiful, beautiful people. Yeah, so friendly, so welcoming. Very little cynicism in them as a society. They are. I think in Western culture we'd be quite guarded in how we go about. Well, in particular, the one thing that's kind of coming up for me when I remember being in Iran was like that. You just get approached by people all the time on the streets, inviting you to their home for tea and sweets. And at the start, your first thought is, well, what's this guy's game? What's up here? This is not right. This is, and then the truth is, that's all they want. They want to get to know you. They want to have a conversation with you. They want to invite you into their home. They want you to sit down in their, they probably have a special room, and they want you to drink out of their special tea or coffee that they have made for you, and they just want to chat to you. And they literally, as strange as this may sound to us, they want to be your friend. And that's their way of doing it. And it's just amazing to experience that and to see that.
And is it a beautiful country?
Yes, it's very, what would you say? It's quite diverse. So like the further south you go, the more deserts there is. It's a very rich culture. Obviously, it's the Persian culture, right? So it's thousands and thousands of years old. So the cities are incredibly beautiful. Strongly, it's quite a what would you say? Contrasting in terms of like you have the older generation who are very religious. And then you have the younger generation who have access now to all this information because of the internet. So less religious, right? So that's quite prominent, and you can, it's visible. It's visible. And then in the north, there's quite a bit of mountains and lakes. So I attempted to climb Demavand, which is the highest mountain in Iran, while I was there. So I had a bit of time in the kind of the wilderness as well. And in the snow at the time. So it's a pretty amazing country, and it's right up there with my kind of favorite trips that I've taken.
And the Couchsurfing, is that a website or?
That's right, yeah, it is a website, yeah, Couchsurfing.org.
Bring a little gift from your home country to each house, is that the idea?
Basically, yeah, you can either bring a gift or something really small, or you can often, like there's no rule with it, you don't have to do anything, but I get the impression that that's what people do, or they just offer to, they cook a meal from their home country, or, you do something to try and make a connection anyway with because it's somebody offering you a room in their house or a space on their couch, or whatever it may be. So I like to do it in countries like that, or a little bit more less visited countries, because you get that kind of, like I said at the start, that window into
where else, what other countries have you done that in?
I think that the best, not the best, but the rawest experience I had with it was in a place called Mauritania, which is in West Africa, between Morocco and Senegal. Big, vast country, kind of been overtaken by the Sahara Desert. But I did it there in Nouakchott, which is the capital. And the guy who ended up being my host, lived in a suburb of Nouakchott that was nearly half an hour outside the main city. I'm reluctant to call it a city, but the town. And that was just I could have been anywhere in the world, as in nobody knew where I was. It was basically off the grid in the world, and just getting to spend some time with this family. All they had was a room with carpet and a few cushions around it. There was nothing else in the room. And then when I came, they all moved out of that room into a tent in the back garden where they used cooking. I mean, I was like, no, and they would not hear of it. You know, in Islamic cultures, like a visitor is put on a pedestal, you know, he's treated like a king. And then these people who had fucking nothing went about putting on this like feast for me for the next 2 days. And I was like, no. But you can't, like, they're not taking no for an answer, you know, and you can argue with them or whatever all you want, but it's not happening. And they'd come into the room during the day and we'd socialize in there and we'd go out, and I followed his name was Mohammed, to his workplace, and then he'd bring me around, and it's all these shared taxis getting around, and we had to take about 4 shared taxis to get back because they only have a certain limit that they'll drive to get back into Nouakchott to do a bit of sightseeing.
When you were in Mauritania, you did an iron-ore train, isn't that right? Is that there?
Yeah, that's what I was there to do. Yeah.
What is that?
So it's kind of, I first discovered it on like a travel blog that is this experience that some, whatever, if you want to call them, extreme travel search out. And there's a train, which is the longest train in the world when it's fully full, 2 kilometers long, I think, when it's fully full. And it takes from the mines in the northeast of Mauritania, it travels from there all the way to the coast to a place called Nouabidou, and it deposits the ore from the mines at the port, and then it gets shipped around the world. And then there's this, because Mauritania is such a vast country and so underdeveloped, like there's no public transport. So what the locals started to do is to use the train as transport. So they'd literally move house on this train, like, so obviously one way it goes full, the next way it comes back empty, and on top of the ore, in some cases, like the night I was there was like herds of goats, herds of sheep, people just like with boxes and boxes of their own belongings that they were bringing to Nouabidou, and you know, for whatever reason, I don't know.
Top of the train, it must be amazing experience.
Yeah. So you spend about what?
Like, do you jump on the train?
You just jump on. Yeah, it stops in one town. So it goes from a place called Zourat to Nouabidou, but it stops in a place in the middle called Choum, Choum. So that's where I got on, and then from there, it took about 13 hours overnight to get to Nouabidou, and yeah, you just hop on. Yeah, it's pretty amazing experience.
I bet. Another place you've been to that I'm really interested in is Ethiopia.
Yes, yeah. Spent a bit of time in Ethiopia, not half as long as I would like to or need to, but another, probably, you know, when people ask me my favorite country I've traveled to, I always say it's either Ethiopia or Iceland. Ethiopia is just there's so much that is different about Ethiopia about any country I've ever been in the world. Like, and I'm not just talking about the kind of geography of the place or the topography. So I went there. The reason I went there was to go to a place called Ertral, which is one of 6 lava lakes in the world. Again, I came across it on a very hidden blog in the depths of the internet when I was kind of looking for things in Ethiopia, because I was going to Tanzania and I was going to Kenya, and I wanted to kind of I was going to do a group travel thing there overland, and I wanted to I knew well I'd want to kind of do something on my own after that, and I was looking at the countries around, and Ethiopia was the one that kind of was the most appealing. Little did I know that I spent like 12 days there, and you could probably spend 120 days there and not see everything. But yeah, so, and then I went into a bit more depth about Ethiopia, and I just found this amazing experience called Ertral, which is in the Danakil depression. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm into that. And then I just kind of built a trip around that. So that's often what I do with these travels, is have one thing I really, really, really appealing, really want to do, and then just kind of build a trip. And yeah, so had like Danakil depression is up on the northeast border with Eritrea, and it's quite it's a very remote part of Ethiopia, of the world of Ethiopia. It takes a couple of days to get there from a place called Mekele. It's just this bizarre part of the world with all these strange kind of features. So it's the second lowest point on the earth after the Dead Sea. and it is the hottest place, or it has the hottest average temperature in the world all year round. You know, it barely gets below 50 degrees. It's hell. And there's people living up there called the Afar people, which are a tribe, a local tribe, a kind of warrior tribe, actually. They're known for their ferocity. So they live in this area. And then there's the experience that I wanted to go there for was the volcano, but there's also these other amazing kind of unique things to it called the salt flats. So there's the Afar people, and there's one other tribe, the name escapes me now, but both of them there's a bit of a hierarchy there, but the Afar people and the other tribe mine the salt, and then they transport the salt on camels. So these trains of camels, they load up the camels and they walk for basically about 5 days to the nearest town, and then they sell the salt for like, I don't know, $1 or something. It's the most, like, it's basically the hardest job in the world, or it has the reputation for that, because of the hardship and the heat, and to just imagine doing that your whole life. I mean, it'd be pretty stoic, I think, by the end of it. So we saw them. We had got to visit the mining of the salt, and then there's these salt mountains there. So we got to see that. Yeah, and then we did a couple of homestays in that region, and then we did the trek to the volcano, which is still my favorite travel experience I've ever had. It was the most incredible thing to witness, to be able to stand on the crater of a volcano literally 20 meters from the lava, and it was spitting, boiling and churning, and then spitting like lava 15 meters into the air, 10 meters above our head, whatever it was. Just mind-blowing, like absolutely. You walk up to this thing and you just see a glow of red, you know, when you're coming up to it, and it's like something out of Lord of the Rings and Mordor and all that. And then you spend the night on that crater, surrounded by the lava churning away, and then you hike down the next day to stay out of the heat, you know, the next morning. And just incredible.
I can really relate to you feeling in awe of the volcano. I remember being in Sicily and seeing the red glow of lava coming out of Mount Etna at night. Beautiful sight. Or when I was in Chile, I hiked to the top of the snow-covered Mount Villarrica near Pucon, and it was an active volcano, so only one guide in the town would bring us up to the crater. And at the top you could see the lava inside, and we were surrounded by sulfuric smoke. It was beautiful, but very scary too. And on that trip, you mentioned Tanzania. Were you doing Kilimanjaro on that trip?
I had done Kili actually the year before, and that's kind of what brought me back there, because I just flew into Tanzania, climbed Kilimanjaro, and then kind of flew back out, and I wanted to see a bit more of the region. It was all a bit of a mess because the year before I had issues with my passport at Dublin airport. I was meant to get on another overland trip through that region and into Rwanda. And I got to Dublin airport. I was refused entry onto my flight because I had an air bubble on my passport page, you know, the bio page. Mm-hmm. It was heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. They wouldn't let me on the flight. So I basically missed that whole trip that I'd booked and paid for. So I went home, panic stations, got myself a new passport in about 5 days. And in that 5 days, I was online looking for things to do. And I saw there was a space on a Kilimanjaro trip. So I said, fuck it, I'm going to climb Kilimanjaro. I was still playing rugby at the time. Mm-hmm. But I just tried to salvage something of my off season, you know, and I really wanted to do something. So that's how that came up. And then it was just in and out, climbed the mountain and got out. So the next year I went back and explored it much more.
That's gas you said that about Tanzania. I went to Tanzania with Emer on our honeymoon. We were going to climb Kilimanjaro, and I had a bit of a mishap myself actually. When we arrived at the airport in Tanzania, my luggage didn't arrive. I had no luggage, nothing. I had no gear for Kilimanjaro, no boots, no jacket. So we were in a bit of a rush. So I literally had to go into the gift shop, and I got a t-shirt with the big 5 animals in the shape of Africa. That was it. That's all I could get. But we ended up doing Kilimanjaro, but I had to borrow all the gear off a guy. I had a parka jacket with a broken zip, a balaclava, a woolen balaclava. I'm on the top of Kilimanjaro with broken zip, workmen's trousers, and I've got a big plastic bottle frozen in my pocket. It was funny, and then after that we went to an amazing place called Pemba, which is just off Tanzanian island, and stayed in this gorgeous hotel called Fundu Lagoon, really gorgeous. And after a few days, there was a lot of honeymooners actually there. And after a few days, we got talking to this couple. They were like, yeah, we're trying to figure you out, because I was walking around with these, like, you know, the big five. That was it. I had 2 t-shirts. So I managed to get up Kilimanjaro in all borrowed gear, boots, jacket, balaclava, everything. I'll actually put up a photo of me at the top of Kilimanjaro on Instagram so you can see it. Do you love mountains, or is it the challenge?
It's the challenge more than mountains. Like, so the first time, so people, I've noticed, rightly, if I'm right or wrong, I'm not sure, but what I've noticed is there's some people who are absolutely obsessed with mountains, and in particular climbing. They're more climbers, you know, and I think that's more the state they get into when they're climbing from the books I've read. But I never really had that. Like, for me, mountains are fucking hard. They're, you know, living on them is just, there's a reason nobody lives on them. It's a hard existence. So I never really fell in love with one until I went to Denali in Alaska last year. And then I got it. Then I saw why people love mountains. It was just the most incredible place I've ever. Wow, it was just the Alaskan range, and flying into the river was 2.5 weeks on the mountain, and everywhere you looked, your jaw was hitting the bloody snow, you know. It was just incredible. But my love really for them came from the challenge, you know, just trying to survive in that oxygen depleted state, and what that means for your kind of the mental stress that you're put under, and just finding a way through that. So that's where it really came from. And then it has morphed a little bit, you know. If you told me I was going to experience a mountain like Denali every year, I'd be like, yes, please, that's good, that's for me. But if you told me I was going to experience a mountain like Aconcagua every year, I'd be like, nah, you're grand, I'm fine.
When you were doing that obviously that's part of your 7 summit, which you're in the middle of it now. You were going to do Everest in May, which unfortunately has been postponed.
That's right, yeah. So
out of the 7?
5 of the 7 done, and like you said, Everest was meant to be number 6, and it was in the books for, or was in the plan to do it this year. April, May, which is the only real season for commercial climbing on Everest, and it just got postponed as everything, you know, did as the world closed down. But it is in the book. It is in the calendar for April, May next year. So kind of living in hope now that that's going to come to fruition, because I really haven't done any major challenges since Carstensz Pyramid, which was the 5th of the 7, which was in West Papua in Indonesia in August of last year. So
could you tell us a little about that one? Because just, you know, as I said, I've been following you for years, and I really was worried for you during that one, because you summited on your own in fog, didn't you? That looked scary.
Yeah, that was a proper climb as such. Like, that's, you know, whereas Aconcagua, Elbrus, even Denali to a certain, there's not a lot of climbing involved. There's a little bit on Denali where you clip in and clip out of some ascenders and descenders, but, you know, whereas Carstensz base, and you're going up it for a good few hours, you know. Now there is fixed lines, so you don't have to fix the line. So if there's any climbers listening to this, they're like, God, probably calling my bullshit here, saying, hang on a second now. But for me anyway, I would class that as I'm not a climber, so I class that as a proper climb. Like I was, you know, you're rappelling down and you're pulling yourself up, and it's a pretty sheer face of, I don't know, 50, 60 degrees anyway, you know. So it's but I loved it. So I absolutely loved it. But there was 3 of us attempting that summit with our guide, a guide named Poxy, Poxi, and he'd done the most summits of Carstensz. He's like 106 summits or something. So he was the most casual guy. Like, you know, we're all there in our like technical gear, and this guy's in a pair of trainers and basically a pair of jeans and a windbreaker. Like, you know, he's like, whatever, having a fag every time we stop. But he started getting a bit frustrated with the 2 guys I was with, because they were really slow. And to be honest, I was getting a bit frustrated with myself, you know. Anyway, I said to him, do you mind if I go ahead? And he goes like, no, you're good, you can climb. And I just took off on my own, you know, because it was pretty obvious, the route. There was only these one or two lines, a few meters apart. And outside of that, unless you brought your own lines, you weren't climbing up this thing. So, the route was pretty clear. So he wasn't worried about that. And he knew I had a bit of common sense, a bit of cop on. And I suppose he just worried about the other two lads and the time they were taking. And he didn't know if we would have enough of a window to summit together. So he just said, off you go. So, I just took off. Now, I did wait from time to time for them to kind of catch up. But yeah, basically kind of climbed it most of the day on my own. And then I just came down on my own. A lot of fun. Although fun for me mightn't be fun for everyone else, but I loved it because it was snowing and it was dark and it was rappelling. And there was a lot, it took a lot of like kind of concentration, and it took a lot of wherewithal, and it took a lot of, the skills I feel I have as a person. So they actually get to be expressed a little bit, which was great.
So it was good training for Everest too, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah. Like the technical side of it was great to experience that, because I don't have a lot of experience with it, So it was really good to do that, and it felt like, even though it was a commercial expedition, and the problem with commercial expeditions, it's not a problem. Issue I have from time to time is you're a bit confined, you're a bit like you're reeled in, and that's not an adventure to me, An adventure is the freedom of it all and dealing with what comes up. So I understand that, like, if I want to get to the top of Mount Everest, that's not until I become an incredibly skillful and competent climber. That's never ever going to happen. So I have to do it through a commercial provider first and foremost. But it still doesn't mean that it doesn't frustrate me, or I don't get frustrated on those commercial expeditions by the kind of confines of the format. So to not have that on one and to be kind of let free to my own devices was very satisfactory.
But like a lot of your travel is solo travel. Do you prefer solo traveling?
I do, yeah, I do. I prefer it because just the decisions are yours to make, so are the challenges are yours to overcome. There's everything, all the responsibility is on your shoulders, which I find very uplifting and empowering. I think that's where you learn the most, is when you take full responsibility and try and deal with whatever comes up. So, I do really enjoy it, and I really enjoy the space it gives me mentally when I'm moving around the world, be it as Couchsurfing or be it on the Atlantic. I really enjoy that headspace, the things that come up, the perspective it gives me, and the things that I see about myself that I can now have information that I can use to improve myself. That's the way I would term it anyway, improve myself as a person.
Is there any countries that you have on your target? I know you probably have a massive bucket list, but is there somewhere in particular that jumps out that you haven't been to yet that you'd love to go to? Probably millions.
Yeah, I'd love to go to Pakistan. It's kind of been on the radar for a little while. I've heard great things, and I'd love to have an adventure through there. I heard, met a few travelers in Iran, I was that had said that Pakistan is like Iran, and the people are very similar. And I know it's from reading I don't know if you've ever read any of Dervla Murphy's books, but an amazing woman. And I know just from reading some of her books about cycling the Karakoram highway and that, how beautiful it is. So I'd love to get up into that region and experience that region, and just the people, and then experience Pakistan as a whole.
One of my favorite books is In Xanadu from William Delafine, and he talks about that area. I'd love to go around there as well, I have to say. You have the Everest obviously as a target, and is there any other adventures that you're planning?
Yeah, so Everest is in the calendar, like I said, April, May next year. And then going back to Kyrgyzstan to climb a mountain called Peak Lenin with a group. I'm bringing a group with Earth's Edge, which is an Irish adventure travel company. So that's in August. And then in the summer, myself and a lifelong friend called Gussie Farrell are going to attempt to row the Atlantic. So from New York to Galway City. So we're both Galway boys. So we're going to try and row the much less forgiving North Atlantic, leaving from Manhattan, arriving in our hometown in the summer of 2022. So it's called Project Empower because we want to kind of use the learnings and use the experience and use everything we go through to, show people, I suppose, the value in huge ambition, huge, like putting yourself out there, trying to attain something that is maybe extraordinary, and all you go through, and that it's within us all to do that. We all have those capacities, and we want to kind of show people, like Gussie, my mate, who's doing the row, was given 5% chance to ever walk again only 2 years ago after a freak accident, and he has proven everyone wrong, all the doctors, all the surgeons. Not only back walking, not only regained his full mobility, but is back walking. He even runs the odd time, and now he try and row across the Atlantic with me. So, I mean, if that's not proof that we all have incredible capacities, I don't know what is.
I saw a lovely clip on Instagram. You rode from Inisheer to Galway the other day, didn't you?
Yeah, we did, in a currach.
And it must be lovely to have a target, something to train for, another adventure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like I haven't had two cancelled by COVID. It's getting a bit frustrating because I'm yearning for the road a little bit and for an adventure. But it was great to get that little kind of mini one out of the way there. To experience that mini one the other day with that row in the currach, and it was a proper challenge. It was hard graft. And to get it over the line and pull it into Galway docks was really cool. And to have these ones in the calendar now for the next 2 years is really, really exciting. And hopefully we can, hopefully none of them are put off by COVID, and we can get out again and get doing what I love to do.
I actually was just thinking of you there, because just literally before you came on the call, and there was massive thunder, and it's loud as I've ever heard. And I was thinking of you in a boat in the Atlantic, much more intense, I'd say, than the last trip.
I think so. Just those northern latitudes, they're traditionally wilder. What I would say is that we got very wild crossing the year I did the Atlantic row. That's why there was so many failures and so many capsizes. And I went through it myself quite heavily. So that was unusual that it was that extreme. So it might be similar to that. The only difference is, and it's a huge difference, is the fact that it's going to be so cold. At least as in those kind of that mid-Atlantic trade winds route that I did before, the sun comes up every day and you absolutely worship it. Like, it makes such a difference when in your mental state, when the sun rises and you get some heat on your skin and warmth into your bones. There won't be much of that on this crossing. It'll be tough. Like, I mean, the cold is a very taxing thing on the mind, and I think that'll just be a real difficult part of this crossing.
I could really relate to that. I remember being in the Atacama desert, and when the sun comes up, just feeling like slowly the heat, the energy that it gives you. And the other thing that'll be a little bit different about the row is obviously you'll have your partner with you.
So that will be a big difference. I think just having another human in your vicinity will bring its challenges, in particular on the strain of that just one relationship, the stress of the environment and the undertaking, and how that's going to be projected onto that one relationship. But at the same time, there will be massive positives of having somebody else there to share the experience. Yeah. And that's why, I had no interest in doing the row on my own this time. I really wanted to do it with somebody or with a group of people. So for the challenges that bring, but also for the kind of increased rewards at the end.
Yeah, isn't that what they say? A problem shared is a problem halved. It'll be great to have that. So there's a question that I intend to ask everybody, our last question, which my wife Emer came up with. So I'd be in trouble if I never asked this question. So it is, if you close your eyes and take 4 deep breaths, allow yourself to think of your happy place, where would that be and why?
I might just do that. So let's see what comes up. So I presume we're talking about travel experiences here, right?
Yeah. Some people have actually picked stuff at home, but...
Okay, sorry.
The original plan was travel. Just a few people have mentioned things at home, but the original plan was travel. And that got me thinking since too. When I started doing interviews with people, all of a sudden I realized my current happy place is down by the River Suir every day walking. That's what inspired me. This podcast was actually walking on the River Suir, surrounded by the mountains, listening to travel podcasts. And my original plan was Greece. And then I went, actually, it's the Suir, 1 mile from my house.
So I won't be going too far either. A little bit of a drive from Galway there's a beach called Glashlan. It's in northern Connemara, not far from Killary, and I just adore the place. And that on a deserted winter day would be my happy place, with maybe one or two souls hanging around, walking the dog or wrapped up. I love the walk. It's overlooked by Muilray, which is the highest mountain in Connacht. It's actually on the Mayo side of Killary, but it's just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful setting. The walk and then a dip in the ocean. The beach and the water is it's kind of like a little cove, and the water is just crystal clear, spectacular. Even on a cold January or February day, it's even better in my opinion, or for me. I enjoy it more. So yeah, I think that would be it.
I actually got married. That's beside Renville, isn't it?
Not far at all.
I got married in Renville, and my wife swam on the morning of the wedding there, and then the day after, myself and Emer went scuba diving off the beach, and it was just magical.
It's really a special part of the world, I think, northern Connemara. Some of the beaches up there, and the villages and the towns and the people and the mountains and the scenery. I could talk all day about the bends and climbing up there, or the Mam Turks and the Aina Valley. And now I have roots there. My mum is from that part of the world, so we visited obviously regularly out to Letterfrack in northern Connemara when we were young. And any chance I get, I'm gone out there swimming in one of the beaches, be it Glashlan or Renville or Ballyconneely or wherever.
And on the other side, my Emer's sister has a house beside White Strand, which is on the other side. And
I know White Strand well. It's wow, that's amazing.
Yes, but up around that area, around Killary, it's just magical on both sides.
Both sides, yeah, absolutely. Actually, if people ever get a chance to climb Muilray, you will get some of the best views in Ireland from the top if you get it on a fine day. So you got White Strand, you got Silver Strand, you can see across the Glashlan, you can see the bends, you can see the Aina Valley, you can see the Mam Turks. You can also, if you turn to your kind of northeast, you can actually see Crowpatrick. You can see out to Clare Island. It's just absolutely stunning up there. It's just beautiful, and it's a nice climb as well, especially if you go from the Duloc side, not far from Delphi Adventure Centre there. And it's a nice hard climb, and it's a great day, and it's just a stunning kind of view of all these beautiful parts of the West Coast.
And thanks, that's a lovely way to finish, because we started talking about adventures and little beaches in Ireland when you were young with your family. So that's a lovely way to finish, because even though we talk about travel adventures around the world, we're probably one of the most beautiful countries in the world. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't agree more with that. I've been to quite a few corners of the world, and the west of Ireland on a fine day rivals them all. It's a stunning place.
I really enjoyed that chat, and we could have gone on for hours more with all these tales. I would ask you to please subscribe so a new episode will appear in your library every week. I would also appreciate if you could leave a rating and review, as it helps others to discover this podcast. I would really recommend you following Damien's adventures on his Instagram, Stock, and also on his Patreon account as well, which has got loads of amazing information, where you can follow his adventures on the Roe and Everest next year. To find out who is on every week, please follow me on Instagram at Travel Tales with Fergal. I have an incredibly special episode planned for next Tuesday, which is so topical I haven't even recorded it yet, and I can't wait to share that with you. Take care and keep dreaming of future travels.
Travel Tales with Fergal.